All right, hello everyone. We're going to give it a couple seconds to get going here. All right, what we're looking at doing today is updating Netlabs. Netlabs is a system where it's for educators that we're able to host real equipment and host virtual machines for access on a website. So what my students use it for is that they log in using their credentials, then they have pods that they can reserve, and then they can have the reservation up to 3 or 4 hours, however long the settings are, and then they're able to be in that lab for that specified amount of time. There's also a scheduling system in there. So there's a lot of things they can do. It's really versatile, and it's made by the company NDG. But there is some upkeep to it. I'm going to be going through and backing up the virtual machine itself that runs the website. I'll be updating the website. I will be uploading OVA files and then duplicating those. So most things are going to be VMware related. So there we go. So I'm still transferring some files over. I downloaded a bunch of files. In fact, 177 gigs today of just OVA files from that I have access to as an educator in IT. And some of them are Windows 10, so I do have to have an Azure DevTools for Teaching license or be a part of that program. If you want some more details on that, you can leave a comment or you can private message me. By moving the rest of these VMs over, moving them from an NVMe that doesn't quite have enough space on it to an SSD. So that's why it currently is spiking up to maybe about a gig, but then coming back down to 60 megabytes per second. This is an SSD, so I should be seeing consistent speeds around 300, or even up to 500, but not sure why that is. But these are the files I'll have access to. And I've got a couple here for Packet Tracer. My thought is actually have students who do not have a Windows computer or a Mac computer, they can actually reserve a time with a pod that has Packet Tracer in it. And one of these actually has a little pod router, so that's kind of interesting. I'm also looking at creating a pod for CCNP. So those students who are taking their CCNA and passed are looking to get into their CCNP. I may be one of them. There'll be a pod to reserve there. I'm not sure what the real equipment will look like on that side. I'll have to physically set those things up. As far as VMware, there are two classes. One is ICM, which stands for Install, Configure, and Manage. The other class is Optimize and Scale. So ICM and ONS. These are the virtual machines that are going to be deployed. One is an AIO. There's going to be 3 ESXis. And those ESXis have virtual machines inside of them. So that's why some of these can be quite large. There's also a vCenter here, one as well. And the SA student is the virtual machine that they have access to during the most of the labs. So that's the one that they log into and do all their work from. ONS is very similar across the board, but there are a couple of different virtual machines in them. So we're getting quite close here. Okay. It has completely stopped. My goodness. So while it's doing this, I was going to show you how to check for file hashes. So these are quite big files. I want to make sure that they weren't altered on the way here, either because of maliciousness or just because a bit got dropped or got flipped. So I'm going to show you how I do that. These files have already changed here since I've had to move them. So I'm in PowerShell here, and I'm going to CD to, I think it's my E drive. and the CD into this one. And if I do a dir, we can see some files that are here. There's a guy on YouTube called Scott Hanselman, and I've taken a lot of his advice and tips on how to form my I guess it's Windows Terminal. I'm using Windows Terminal Preview. That's how I'm able to get some of these icons here. So if you like the way PowerShell looks here, I recommend checking out his channel. He's got some really good tips. He's a developer and works with Microsoft. So I'm going to go through and I'm sure there's a better way to do this, but I like how the results are. But I'm going to do get-file hash. The first parameter is a path. So if I go through and do a path here, I'm going to pass it the Cisco Packet Tracer 8 pod router, and the hashes I have are in MD5. I know, not the best, but that's what I got. And I'm going to actually put a semicolon here. By doing this, it's going to run all of these in succession. I don't have to wait. It doesn't have to wait on me to give me the next file. And I didn't realize it would do this, but it actually puts all of them into one table. So it's quite nice. So let's tap this again, get file hash, Cisco. I'm using tabbed autocomplete, best feature in the world. Algorithm MD5. I'm going to get dash file hash again. Tab, tab, tab. PMAP, okay. Algorithm MD5. And just by pressing enter here, it'll give me the algorithm, the hash, and where the path was. And I've got a text file that I can pull from to verify that these hashes work. So I'm looking at the chat here. Better go get a lab computer ready for Office 2010. So why Office 2010? All right. So I'll let this work here. Still stuck here. I want to pause it and then start it again to see if that helps anything. There you go. Okay. All right. Check my browser here. Let's get another one going. So I'll get my browser here set up, ready to go. So this is our website here, netlabs.cnsattc.org. And the back end of all this is going to be VMware. And I'm going to try to guess the IP address. I'm totally prepared for this today. So I use Class C IP addressing since it's unique in the building. 50. It's 150.10. So one of the disadvantages, I guess, of Netlabs right now is that it still uses ESXi 6.0. So even though I'm hosting VMware or ESXi 7 on top of it and it works just fine, I still have to have a little bit of knowledge of the back-end side. So right now this is the host server, and this hosts all of the VMs. So I've got 114 on here. Keep in mind that I typically run anywhere between 6 to 10 pods of VMware ICM, and each one of those pods will have 6 VMs there. So 6 times 10, 60 there, and then I also have the same for ONS. And we have 6 pods of Cisco, and there's PCA and PCB within that. So there's 10 VMs dedicated to our Cisco. My hope today is to leave a few of these here just to make sure that the new ones work, but I'm totally updating everything. It bit me in the butt this past semester whenever we had VMware labs, and I just rolled them over into the new semester. Well, what happened was that the licenses that were in text files inside of that expired, and there's just kind of some odd issues there. So by downloading these all fresh, I should be good for another year with these. On the other side, 192.168.150.20, I believe. This is the management side. There we go. So we have the NDG hosts and we have the NDG management, and Netlabs, which is this website here, is hosted right here as this VM here. So while looks like they finally finished transferring. So before I go any further, I was going to verify the hashes real quick. And I'm just going to copy in the hashes here. So that way, because I do have passwords on here that I can't leak. So there's one that starts with a CA. DA8. All right, so these are the hashes here. And I can go through here letter by letter to compare these. However, there is an operator in PowerShell you can use to help you with this. Since I've had them all right here, I can just use copy and paste. I can use what's called a compare object commandlet in PowerShell. And I'm going to compare this one here. I'm just using Control-C to copy. And then I'm going to grab this one. Put in I probably don't need it, but here's a difference object parameter, and I'll paste this in here. And no news is good news here. Since there's no news here, I compared these two things and they're exactly the same. Now, what if they weren't the same? What if this one bit was flipped to a 1, or that hexadecimal character? What we'd see here is that the input object would be slightly different there. So this is in the CIA triad. This is verifying integrity. So compare object again. And we can do this a couple more times. Just grab that. Yep, no problem. Now this is really handy when you have not just MD5 hashes, but when you have maybe SHA-256 hashes or 512, and they're super long. So those look good. One more for good measure. All right, they look good. So usually you can just look at a few bits of this and they look pretty close. Now there is a way to forge MD5 hashes. I understand that, but the form they send me just has the MD5, so I don't have any other way to verify that. So I have done my due diligence there. They are all good. I can now exit out of that. Now I'm going to log into the administrative side of Netlabs. So it's like a good thing I came in here. The certificate expires for the website. We did have some issues with this before, but I thought they were resolved. I don't really want to have to go in there every 90 days to renew that, so we will check on that later. Before I do an update of Netlabs, I'm going to go into the management side and create a new snapshot of the virtual machine here. Take a snapshot, call this 2022-01-12, and call it snapshot. Super creative. And snapshots take literally seconds. I'm not too worried about the memory. I just want to make sure that if there is an issue, I can roll back. Ooh, interesting. Okay, we do a software update here. I'm pretty sure there is a new version 22 something. So I noticed it during finals week. Finals week is not when you want to do any kind of upgrades. Pro tip. 21.2. And have you taken a snapshot? You are the witness. Yes, we have. Start the update. Right, rebooting. While it's rebooting, I'm also going to get into vCenter on the backside. This should bring back any memories to anybody that has managed VMware for a while. So VMware typically is managed in the web browser now, but to deploy OVAs, the website really doesn't work well with ESXi 6.0. So what we're looking at here is pretty much the same thing as that website, but in its own vSphere application, with the list of all of our VMs in the host. All right, update complete. Now, I'm going to go into here, the virtual machine infrastructure, and I'm going to manage the inventory here. I'm pretty sure I can go into here and delete VMs, and Netlabs will kind of clear it up. But I think it's better to manage the inventory on the actually backside of the website instead. That way, it is made aware of those changes as you're doing them. All right, virtual machine inventory. I'm thinking here. I don't think I can actually delete these virtual machines until I take the pods offline or delete the pods. I'm trying to think of the best way to do this. Oh goodness, there's a view in here from 6.7. So those can be removed, no problem. Yeah, goodness. So, lots of deleting here, but get it all cleaned up. And I should also be seeing these delete over here, just kind of showing you how cool this is. So the website's actually going through and talking to vCenter and is completing these. So that does mean that the website has full access as admin to vCenter, but it's in its own separate lab environment. One of these. There we go. Refresh this one. We're getting there. Two more of these. These weren't even being used anywhere. These have been added last spring. Actually, no. I think we used them spring and fall 2020. We upgraded to using 7.0. Thinking last spring 2021. So hardware-wise, on these Netlabs servers, we have two NVMEs. So every one of these VMs here boot up at NVMe speeds. It is really cool. But that kind of scale for enterprise NVMEs do cost a lot of money. So we do, the kind of performance isn't free, but pretty nice. Trying to think. That's the master there. I'm thinking, can I just remove these? Yeah, didn't think so. So what we need to do is go in and either delete the pods I want to do here is just take all these offline. Linux is fine. Screen Plus is fine. But we are going to take all of these off. Okay. This means that no one can actually go in and reserve a lab, and kind of puts it into a mode that's ready to be edited. So I'm going to go ahead and just see if I can delete the pod as well as deleting the VMs. Yes, that's wonderful. So that means a lot less clicking for me. Now, by deleting a pod like this, it is deleting all of the previous information, which everything starts over at semester, so I'm not too concerned. If I want to be really fancy, I can try to go in here to see if I can do 2 of these at the same time, but yeah, didn't think so. That's all right. Just gonna confirm it here. How everything looks. So it is pretty smart about it when I go and try to do this. It's attempting to turn off the virtual machine just to make sure, but I couldn't do it because it's already turned off. So those are good errors. So that's pretty cool. All right, pod was deleted successfully. Let's do that a few more times. After deleting this one, I will go through and I'll show you my to-do list for the semester. What I typically have to do as an instructor. All right, there's that one. There we go. Delete. Delete all. So here is my to-do list for the semester. Everything here pretty much has to be done prior to school starting next Tuesday. So a lot of these things are really close to being done. I just don't have them completely finished, so they're not checked off. But it does give me some anxiety. So I am teaching 13 separate sections this semester. I'm not sure how many unique classes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 unique classes, which has been a lot better than in the past. But I'm teaching multiple sections of some classes. But 10 of them start next Tuesday, 3 of them finish at 8 weeks, and I start 3 more for the second 8 weeks, so it's 13 total sections throughout the semester. Syllabi have already been updated for all of those. Canvas has mostly been finished. I just need to add my syllabi to those, but I'm waiting for something special to add in for those things. Delete this one. Delete, gone. I'm waiting until Friday afternoon. It's about as close as I can get to having as many students sign up for the courses as possible. I want to add in new students into Active Directory. I'm then going to add any new students into Netlabs and remove any old students. Make sure I don't forget to do that. Otherwise, it builds up builds up pretty quick. Import students for desire to learn D2L. So that's the new thing that VMware is using. We used to use on the hub. They're using that. You can make sure to put a Canvas link into there. Getting pretty close there. And Netacad, I have to import all those in manually for three courses: Internet Networks, Software, or Switching, Routing, Wireless Essentials, and Enterprise Network Security Automation. I believe that the last one is. Delete, remove all. Done and done. And then I've got to make sure I'm going to import all students into Teams. Really new students, remove old ones as well. We were granted some enhancement money from this previous semester for the previous year, but it's for this fiscal year. So we're actually looking at getting a couple of new servers. These quotes have been submitted, so I finished that today. Internships, we have, as far as I know, 10 to 11 people in internship right now, so they trying to get places to open up for interns. It's been a lot harder than it should be, I think, but again, not getting a lot of responses back on that, unfortunately. And then we have a new instructor for PC Basics, AJ Steinberg. He's out of Carthage. So excited to have him on. They'll be teaching our PC Basics courses at night, Monday and Wednesday this semester. So that's really all for getting ready for Tuesday. A lot of things saying all of this here is dependent on Active Directory right here, so can't do those until that. Then we have Unearth Potential. They are wanting to have some cable be pulled and also install the voice hardware that they need for their telephones they got last semester. So we're continuing to give them some tech help. They were a community project this past semester. I got new VMs for ICMONS. We are doing the VMware VMs now. Bought a new HP charger. I think this is due 2.1 instead, but we'll see. So that's what a to-do list looks like, at least for me this semester. I want to say that favorite thing for me to do is prep labs for the semester and throughout the semester. I like the logistics of getting things created, making sure we have all the parts in. Like for VMware this semester, we actually have a plethora of hardware to use. In fact, I just bought a PCIe card. We have some extra NVMe's laying around. So I'm going to have a desktop computer act as a storage server for VMware. And I'm planning on putting 4 of those NVMe's into this PCIe card. There were a couple available. One was $34, and there's also another one that's just under $300. The one that's under $300 has a built-in switch for it that converts it to what the motherboard needs. The $35 or $40 one, whatever it was, doesn't have that ability. It requires the motherboard to make that switch. So we're going to need some hardware tech talk here. NVMe typically is a PCIe 4-lane PCI connector. If you want to add more of those into it, the NVMe still needs to have that 4-lane. So some motherboards have the ability to basically split a by 16 or by 8 into 2 or 4 groups of 4-lane connectors. But some motherboards don't have that ability. So if you need the card itself to split it up before it gets to the PCIe board, then you got to buy that more expensive connector. But the one I bought is shipping from China, so it's not going to get here probably until February, even though I bought it on 1/12 today. But I'm looking forward to putting that in because I think that would be, if it works with the motherboards, we can have a couple of computers with 2 terabytes of NVMe's to be used for VMware or really any kind of storage server. We'll also have more hosts to work with as well. We can have a development area and a testing area, so we can build things in a test area and then try to roll them over into the development area. Maybe the development area has better hardware, or maybe has an uptime quota that we're trying to meet. So I think that'll be a lot of fun. But I'm pretty sure we'll have up to 8 hosts available for that. All right, one more ONS, and then I can't do this one, can I? Okay, so we can delete them, but we just manually delete them. That's not bad. Okay, and delete this pod. There's a few of these other pods that we don't utilize a whole lot, but there's a plus pod in here that's got a few different types of VMs. We can take a look at those real quick. There's a Windows 10, Windows 7, Windows 8. There's also a Ubuntu. So students can remote in or go to the website and have access to these things. However, my preference is students who use a VPN into the main computers, and they're able to take advantage of Hyper-V and hardware. And we'll delete this one. There is an ethical hacking one. But I'm not sure if it has the VMs in it though. No, but I did get the VMs last semester. So there's an ethical hacking lab we can set up in here. All right, so that's all the pods there. I'm gonna go back into inventory real quick. Individually delete those VMs because we don't need them anymore. I wish there was a good way to do this, and maybe there is from here. This list is a lot shorter now. That's nice. You can delete from best, but I don't think it's any faster, so still a 1 by 1. We're getting there though. But imagine here about 348, 350 will be going in and deploying the OVAs. I'm pretty sure I selected the wrong option there a second ago, so all right. I'm not too concerned about the pods for PC1, PC2 for Cisco, so I may just leave those as is. Okay. But there was this one here that didn't get deleted from disk. Don't worry, we'll grab that real quick. All right, so it didn't take too long. All right, how to deploy OVAs. So we're going to look at, I'll show you what it looks like in ESXi 6.0, which is done through here, File, Deploy OVF Template. And you do it from a file. This is where I browse to my folder here. And I'm only going to do ICM today. But I'm going to go in order here, the SAAIO. I'm going to back up. You can put a URL here, but with the files I have, I download them manually. And it's going to be a 33.3 gig file. The size on disk is 63.6 gigs, thin provisioned, but it does take up to 85 if you use thick. I use thin for everything. I mentioned that we have two NVMe drives. They're each 1.92 terabytes. Um, they are not set up in RAID, so I do have them separate, but try to save as much space as possible. Even within provision, they deploy super quick in the lab environment. So I'm going to call this name VMware ICM v7, and I'm going to call this trying to think of the good naming scheme here. Let's call it pod 1, I think. Nope. Ow. Phooey. I hit escape. I got out of the entire thing. All right, there we go. Next. Next. Yeah, I think that works. All right, so there's a data store, which is just about 112 gigs that's on the actual motherboard itself. And it says non-SSD, so I'm guessing that's maybe a thumb drive or something that's on there. But we do have quite a bit free now. We deleted all those VMs. So I'm going to put this on NVMe 001. We do thin provision. There's a network it connects to called Safety Net. So there's a network that's a part of, but that safety net goes nowhere. And so I'll put this over here, and we go through and do some more. Deploy OVF template. We're going to browse to the ESXi01. I'm going to delete this DM dot and call this pod 1 underscore. And I'm going to put them all on the same NVMe drive, so that way they're all together. Then provision, next, next, finish. Now the AIO, that has a lot of space on it, so it takes a long time to deploy. Some of these may only take 3 to 5 minutes. ESXi02. Then next, next, finish. Oh, 3. As a student. So ESXi03 is already finished. Move that up in the queue. All right, one more. vCSA. This would be the vCenter virtual machine. All right. Now, one of the really nice things here is once they are deployed, you can clone them. You have a couple of options. You can clone them just really here in the vSphere client, but Netlabs has the ability to clone an entire pod. So you set up once, and then you spend about 2 minutes, and then you have cloned a pod, and you clone that over and over again. What I typically do is for every clone I make, I alternate the drive it's on. So this pod 1 is on NVMe 001. Pod 2 will be on NVMe 002. That way, if two students are using the lab at the same time, pod 1, pod 2, they have their basically their own drive that they're working on. If a lot of students are working at the same time, then we'll see a little bit of degradation of performance on the disk drive. A few of the VMware labs go through and do read and writes on the drives, and so I don't think I've seen where students have hit a theoretical maximum, hit the maximum read write, but one of the ways to help that is make sure that the pods are alternating too on the disks. All right, ESXi01 is good. Cool. Now all these red icons here, they are there most likely because of the MAC addresses being duplicated. Do a summary here. We can take a look at maybe what's wrong. Yeah, MAC conflict. But I do believe I've resolved this. I went through and on all the well, pod 1, they'll all be the same. Sorry, not pod 1, but PC 1, they'll all be the same. PC 2, I incremented the MAC address by 1. So they will be duplicated within each other, but they never are talking to each other, so it's no big deal. But I am curious to see if I clear this, if they come back. All right, E6IO2 is done. All right, as of now, I'm not going to keep the stream going for another 23 minutes while the AIO goes. So I'll just minimize those for a minute. And I'll just show you what it looks like on this backside. So if I go into pods and create a new pod, and because I've subscribed to several different curriculums, that's why all these show up here. Cisco requires you to be part of the Cisco Netiquette program. As well as the multi-device pod, also Cisco. Here's the ICM 7.0. If I click on this one, we can see what the used pod IDs are. I'll just call this one 91, so it's a little bit easy to work with. Call this VMware ICM pod 1. Next. And if I go into here and view, here are the virtual machines that pop up here. So my process here is, after these complete, I go into virtual machine infrastructure, virtual machine inventory. I will import virtual machines, basically scans the entire vCenter, anything new. It'll then add it in here. And then once they're in here, I just get to go and kind of pick the VMs. Go down to here, I do attach a VM, and I say, hey, you attach to this host. Now, this is the Cisco Windows 10 DM. This is the main master. So that's not what I want, but it's easy as that. And then what I do is I create a snapshot once they're in there. That snapshot is what it reverts back to every single time. So whenever you go into a lab, you do things, you turn it off, turn it back on, it's back to the way it was exactly by using those snapshots. So this is how it works. Is NDG is the front end, and then the middle person, so the middle software, and then it goes and does all these VMware things. But it just has a website GUI that the administrator can work with without having to know all the VMware stuff. Whenever I first had to set this up, I had very minimal VMware experience. I had just taken VMware courses myself from the previous instructor. So if you ever heard the term trial by fire, this was a flamethrower onto my VMware experience. But got to learn a lot of really cool things, and I think it's pretty clever how they're able to do this. I think the license for it is about $2,000 a year. But as far as lab infrastructure goes, it's well worth it. See how these are doing. So this one's still got 60 minutes, but I may do a small video and attach it to this one later on. But basically, we're just waiting for these to deploy. While it's doing that, I'll show you what it looks like in 7. So I'll show you my main ESXi. Actually, I have vCenter up. Now you can, virtual machines, if you right click, register VM, you can deploy a virtual machine from an OVF or OVA file. When you do that, you can upload it here, and then you select the storage, and then we'll deploy that way. So the main difference, the terminology is all the same, but the main difference is that one is exclusively web host. ESXi 6.0 had the option to do both, but the web interface was really awful. Just kind of show you what that looks like. To do the same thing here, right click, register VM, you do this, and next. And I've had an error out in here before, so I don't want it to hang up or anything here while I'm doing this, but it's actually working a little bit better than it has in the past. But I've had to just give me a whole lot of error messages over and over again, pop-up messages. So typically the way to manage that best is through the vSphere client. All right, I think I'll end the stream here, and then I'll finish this up on my own. Have fun.